Good to see everybody. August the 3rd. Does it seem possible? We're halfway through the summer. So lucky we're talking today, second part, last part, about our relationship with time. And if you remember last week, we discussed that the relationship each and every one of us have with time is critical. Why? Because how we dedicate our time, the balance of what we need, all right? Not just get it, work, but the balance of our needs. And working out that balance has a major impact. If all you do is go at a task head on, like it's the only thing in your life, and you run out of steam, you wear yourself down, you injure yourself, all of that lack of balance about your relationship with time has a major impact on the opportunities that you and I are going to be able to give ourselves. All right. And so I want to encourage people to really seriously look at the positive outcomes that bring you here every week, the positive outcomes that you are looking for longer term. I want you to ask yourself, where did the time go? Let's start with that question. Where did the time go? All right. All right. So remember, I said this last week, but I really, really believe this, so I'm going to repeat a little of it. If the sun came up today, this is a good day. Regardless of how we feel, this is a good day. Why? Because it gives you a new start. It gives me a new start. If things worked well yesterday, we can celebrate it today. If things didn't work that well yesterday, we can improve them based on the experience we learned. If we wore ourselves out yesterday, then we'll be digging ourselves out of a hole today. It's about a healthy relationship with time, not some kind of efficiency expert saying, an hour here, pull up your bootstraps. That only takes this amount of time. Go, 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 go. You don't get to enjoy yourself. You don't get to indulge yourself if you're not finished the work. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a healthy, balanced relationship with time so that all of our most important needs, all right, and I've asked you to make a list of those for yourself. They differ with different people. All of those needs get handled and dealt with, fed well enough, all right? So if the sun came up today, it's not just that you get a new start to work. It's also that you get a new start to see whatever it was that you were dealing with yesterday that remains unfinished, undone, or unacceptable to your long-term goal. All right. You can revisit the plan. It gives you an opportunity to use that, all that work, and it netted me that. And it doesn't feel like it's in the direction I want to go. It doesn't seem, you can revisit that and rethink it. All right. The past is over. And when you are revisiting things, because I don't know too many life goals or important goals that happen like that, it's a process, right, people? It's a process. So understand that, respect it, be good to yourself, factor that in. When you revisit things, if you're only looking at the negative of the past events, and you let those negatives, you don't just observe them, acknowledge, okay, that didn't work that well. Now, positively, what can we do about that? If you let those negatives linger, and heaven forbid, you let the negatives become part of the evidence of your competence or your worth or your whatever conclusion you're making there, if you make it about that and they linger, all you're doing is holding on to the past. And the past is over. Put it down. Learn from it. Instead, try to do a switch. Instead of reminding yourself, when you're looking longer term, if you're looking at clutter, if you're looking at unresolved, anything else, including clutter, all right, instead of reminding yourself about the ways the plan failed, the action failed, you failed, remind yourself instead, okay, grasshopper, I say this to myself all the time, and I bump my head on things regularly, all right, and I say to myself, okay, grasshopper, how did that work? What have we learned from this, grasshopper? There used to be a TV show with a little student monk, and he'd be sent off to do this task, which, like you, handling clutter, handling things that have haunted you, all right, from the past that you just are dying to deal with, all right. He would come back exhausted and beaten and discouraged, and he'd meet his master monk, and the master monk would say to him, observe, grasshopper, what have you learned from this? And I love that expression, because at the same time we have the choice to feel defeated, discouraged, we also must make ourselves ask another question. All right. You get stuck in negativity. That is not leading you anywhere that's good for you or any place you want to be. And it is not the whole truth. So don't make it the whole truth. At the same time, ask yourself, okay, what did I learn from this? And also remind yourself about how you are now more informed and more competent. And really a great part of bumping your head on things is if you let yourself learn, if you let yourself observe, don't want to repeat that again. All right, you're more ready for anything that is unpleasantly similar to what you don't like right now that happened. You're also, if you take a growth mindset, according to Jane Burka, remember, in procrastination, versus a fixed mindset. Fixed means it just is this, it only remains that way. If it didn't work, it's a failure. Growth means part of that didn't work. Was it my contribution, or do I have a faulty plan, or is it the combination? When you take a growth mindset to something, what do I need to learn from this? All right. To do and not do. It also makes it infinitely more likely and possible for you to try again, to keep trying. So I'm not asking you to put on rose-colored glasses and not see the things that don't work. Acknowledge the negatives. They're part of the reality. They are part of the truth. But at the same time, nothing is ever all negative or all positive. If you look back on the positives in your life, I'm sure that you're going to be able to see that that positive in some way cost you something, right? All right, anything big and important, almost for sure. So acknowledge the negatives and then make yourself look for the positives. It's in there. Find it in the situation and find it in yourself, because you are part of that factor. Plumb your depths, no matter how discouraged you are, until you find your strength. Remember a few podcasts ago, I asked you to write down 3 strengths that you have. I want you to keep that list at hand, especially when you're not feeling your best about things. Because even if something is very defeating, All right, feels very defeating. The strength you might have in that moment is just to persevere. Can I ask people to mute themselves? I don't know who's unmuted there. Okay. And at the same time that you're assessing how well, how successful the situation you're working on is and what that means about you, please be gentle with yourself. Okay, be kind to yourself and be patient. If things failed in the past, it can't always be your fault. Even a stop clock is right twice a day. All right. You can't be wrong. You can't be at fault all the time. Some of it may be bad information. Some of it may be a plan that just missed an essential component that you weren't aware of. All right. Perhaps your attempt was whatever it was. All right. Good, bad, or indifferent. You were trying and you didn't succeed well enough for whatever your goal is. But the last time that you did that was the end result, you didn't know as much as you know now. Right? That's why it's so important to ask yourself, what have I learned from this? And if you had known what you know now, you probably would have had more success, which means if you persevere, every time you ask yourself, how did that work? Not so great. How did it miss the mark? How did I do there? Is there something I need to do differently? Is there something else, a component part of a successful plan that seems to be nagging at me? Okay. You are never, if you are a perfectionist, then I would strongly suggest that you get Jane Berkus' book, Procrastination, How to Stop Now. All right. And look at the section on perfectionism, because you will, even if in an instant you had absolute 110% success, get ready. It doesn't last very long. All right. That perfect moment is fleeting. All right. There may be things moving forward that you still need to know. I know I've had many lessons in my life where that was true. There may be skills that we still need to acquire. And above all else, there may be confidence that we need to allow ourselves to develop, even when the plan doesn't work 100%. But you won't do that. I won't do that if the conclusion, the takeaway message I give myself is to undercut myself and remind myself of how things didn't measure up. All right, if I just look at the negatives and I don't factor in, okay, but what do I know now that I didn't know then? Okay, and how you ran out of time. Doing the same thing over and over and over and over, expecting different results. And when the time got used up, your energy was used up and you gave up. Remember last week, I said, it's great when others encourage you, and it is. It feels good to be validated and affirmed. But it's far better when you can take responsibility and the power to do that for yourself, to encourage yourself, to get yourself back up. Then you've got a sure thing. All right. When you have an internal locus of control versus exclusively an external locus of control, which means your affirmation, your worth, your encouragement, all good things come from outside you and they are given to you like a little baby bird being fed in the nest. It's far better when you're the eagle and you go hunting for the fish. And the fish is the ability to get yourself back up on your feet by affirming yourself and acknowledging what your strengths are and reminding yourself that if you have learned to get this far in life, you are certain to be able to do the last heat in this race. You have it in you. You're still standing despite disappointment and discouragement. All right. Don't just focus on the negative. Next week, we are probably going to be talking about how to garbage negative thinking. All right. Because that's a huge deterrent. And the great thing when you can affirm yourself, as well as accepting affirmation and thanks and gratitude and aren't you great and what a success or whatever, all right, that takes its shape. And you don't, when you can do it for yourself as well, all right, you don't have to please anybody. You don't have to satisfy anybody. All alone in your own little world, that bubble, that safe bubble that we all live in, no matter what great relationships we have our personal space bubble. The great thing when you can affirm, acknowledge your strengths, not beat yourself up for the ways things went wrong, remind yourself that really, that just indicates I need to learn something, okay? You can always then get yourself back up. You can learn to be your own backup. And remember, nobody knows you. I don't care who they are. Nobody knows you, and nobody can meet your needs. Neither should they, and they are not responsible. It's great when it happens. We are responsible for knowing our own needs and meeting our own needs. All right. And we do that healthily through, all together now, the BLs, boundaries and limits. All right. So this week, when an unhappy memory comes to mind, and they will, especially one that has that power to kind of get in under your skin a bit and start to undermine your confidence and your belief in yourself, it will also, if you let it in there, it will also undermine your willingness to keep trying. Did you try this week what we discussed? That I asked you to take a small piece of paper and a pen and write down what that insidious event was and that you are discouraged about, you're dissatisfied with, you're unhappy about, all right? And also, what did that situation perhaps contribute to the lack of success moving forward? Did you write that down? Here's what happened. Here's how it happened. Just in macro level, not detail, as well as the feelings that were associated with it, particularly those feelings that really landed, those overwhelming feelings that you had. Did you try after writing it down to scrunch it up and throw it in the garbage where it belongs? Because by the time you're reflecting on it, it's over. You are the only person keeping it alive. The time you're spending going over and over and over, or even just one time over, okay, that's time you could either be healing, recovering, resting, finding joy, fun, play, reminding yourself that there are other ways you are a growing, learning, developing human being. Take a deep breath and get back in the game. All right. When those things happen, I'm going to give you a challenge. Don't hold on to them. Acknowledge them. Assess what the components were that worked, didn't work. All right. How much of that was you in that you didn't know something, you don't yet have a skill, or your strategy and plan, frankly, has a few holes in it. Do that. All right. Do the assessment of it, reassessment of it, but then let it go. Get on with a new plan. All right. Remind yourself in tangible ways. That's over. And when it comes back to mind, that's over. All right. Did you say anybody here if you did it? Did you say, because it's a very powerful strategy. It's so kinesthetic. It just takes all parts of our awareness when we do that. Did anybody here do that and say, okay, lesson learned, don't have to learn that lesson again? All right. Or did you do maybe what you've done in the past and go back to an old bad habit? Did you let it remain kind of lingering in the present? Because if it's lingering in the present and you're letting it linger, it's going to cost you part of your future. All right. It will come with you. Did anybody else? And if you did, for heaven's sakes, put it in the chat box, because everybody here, you don't come and spend your Wednesday mornings with me for no reason. I love having you. I wish you did, but no. All right. That's not the goal here for you. I know. All right. And if you've tried something else that worked, for heaven's sakes, put it in the chat box, because everybody, don't give advice, share experience. All right. Because everybody here at some point either has or will have the need for a helping hand up. All right. So if you came up with your own idea, built on that idea I had, I love it. Share it. All right. Now, maybe the old write it down and throw it in the garbage wasn't something that you really felt was you. Did anybody journal it? Because journaling it, particularly in this situation in written form, is a really great way to track it. So it isn't a transitional situation. It isn't a transitory thought that you forget about later. All right. So write down whatever past event is lingering. All right. Particularly those that weren't all that satisfying, weren't very fulfilling. All right. And then what I want you to do, seeing that for what it was, I want you to be quiet and peaceful. I want you to close your eyes. I want you just to block every other thought that wants to come into your mind. No, another time. And just find peaceful, find a state of peaceful, and then envision, what do you want? What does it look like? What do you need for your future to be that brings you here with me almost every Wednesday morning? What do you want? And what do you need your future to be? Your immediate future, like today or right now, I need it to be. Okay, because one may grow on the other, on the heels of the other, shoulders of the other. Then a little further out, short term, end of the week, next week, the week after that, and longer term. And they may not be exactly the same thing. All right, and that's okay. Right now, a little further out and long term, what do you want and need your future to be? Did anyone picture what that future might look like and feel like? Right? And if past plans and efforts didn't make it happen, knowing what you know right now, you're on a better footing. You could do it differently this time. Enrich your efforts by realizing how doing it differently will make you feel differently. That gives you two bangs for a buck. Experience builds improvement, even if it's just by avoiding the negative. Don't fall in that sand trap again. All right. But it also, gosh, how many times have we said this? It sends the chemicals, the hormones to your brain through the feelings you have. Release those. All right. And it's sending power and energy to the very part of your brain that is going to help you complete this task, head off any mistakes. Did anybody track that by writing down number 1, number 2, number 3? All right. And then write down number 1, the one thing that you could do right now. And whatever you were feeling, there are often, quite often, things you don't feel able or ready to do, but there is always something you can do that is a baby step forward. Write that down beside number 1. You know why I want you to write it down? Because the very action of being physical and mental at the same time coordinates different parts of your brain and your body. And it gives you a returnable message, a message that you can return to. You can check in with yourself. All right. And then next to number 2, what did it feel like? What does it feel like to have an idea about what you can do right now? And then number 2 is a little further out. What do you believe you need to do that maybe you need a little bit of support, all right, that is just a little stretch further past immediate, a little bit out of reach, but doable, all right? And then beside number 3, what does the end goal look like? Come on, people. You have to work at it, all right? And what do you feel you need to do to hit step 1 right now, all right? Step 2, step 3. You do that, you develop that skill to stop yourself and do the 1, 2, 3s. And you know what? You aren't going to be very far off course. You would be surprised at the progress that you can make. All right. And when you're imagining that final end goal, okay, I want you to create that image vividly. I want you to taste it, feel it, see it. All right. So these 2 strategies, one to unload the negativity and bring matters back into stark relief, the negative and the positive. What's the truth about it? The precise doable action plan. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Immediate, a little further out, and long term. Make it far more possible for you to see your goals. Not just feel them, not just have an impression of them. You start building that plan. It's like when you put you're making a dress and you put a pattern down on it. First, you had to visualize it. Did that get the dress made? No, it didn't. Buying the plan, developing the plan, choosing the plan. Did that get the dress made? No, it didn't. All right. It's when you can actually see what that next step is and summon whatever supports you need. Scissors, tape, outlining stuff, fabric. You see, I sew a lot. Outlining materials, all right, to trace it out. Visualize them. Because if you can't see the target, like in vivid, stark relief, you can't reach it. Just imagine that there is a target. There's a dartboard in front of you. But the door is closed. If you can't see that dartboard, you can't hit it. And all the things, the negative thinking, the just focusing on the negative, the distraction, that things that are happening now that keep you from the goal you want, That's the door being shut. As you visualize those goals, though, they actually become, and you stark relief figure out what's required. They come closer and closer and closer, and you realize they are more and more possible. All right. And when they feel within reach, has anybody experienced that with respect to something that they wanted to do, they wanted to accomplish? Their energy, your energy starts to rise. It's amazing how you don't feel you have a slow leak anymore. It's amazing how Netflix or the internet or whatever, all right, you're doing to distract yourself doesn't feel that enticing. And ask yourself, compared to how you feel when you look at the undone goal, the unmet need, versus stark relief, you've got it figured out and you've got a 3-step plan that is doable, it's realistic. Tell me now, even just thinking about that, do you feel better or do you feel worse? All right. Do you have some semblance of a plan? Even right now, if it's just in your own mind. Allow yourself to imagine. Okay, because if you can't picture it, you can't see it in your mind's eye, you can't make it happen. Allow yourself to imagine that things are actually going to work out well. Not perfectly, not seamlessly, but that whatever hiccups you encounter, you will find a way to get past them. Good enough. And occasionally, you may need to change course. You may need to add something like develop a skill or a strategy or equipment. All right. But worrying about it is not the same thing as preparing for it. Okay. Acknowledging that it is a possibility gives you a much better chance, far higher probability of heading off whatever would get in the way based on the experience that you have from the setbacks that you're discussing with yourself, you're deciding are failures or disappointments. Okay. Why? Because you'll see them coming sooner. And you won't make them bigger than life because you will have had that experience in the past. Anybody here ever say to themselves, I need to get there, and I don't exactly know how I'm going to do that, but I've done this. I mean, we're not talking about world peace or something like that. All right, we're talking livable endeavors. Okay, so I've done this. I've overcome this. I'm not 100% sure at this moment how I'm going to do it, but I know I can do it. I just need to figure it out, and I need to pace myself. All right. And above all else, in that pacing yourself, set a routine for yourself, a pattern of behavior that allows for the fuel you need. This is not escapism. This is not a distraction. Where are you going to get the fuel? You're going to get it from joy, fun, and play. Don't forget that. You're going to get your confidence. You're going to increase your confidence by reminding yourself in tangible ways, all right, that you are a growing, learning, developing human being. And this unmet goal that you have, this need you have, all right, you can do that. And remind yourself of the one thing right in front of you that you're capable of doing. And by doing that one thing, You now have the experience that you're moving in the right direction. And tomorrow there will be another. And the next day there will be another one step. And the day after that, and the day after that. See yourself putting one foot in front of the other in the direction you want to go at a pace that you can live with, that you can manage, that respects the other things you need to deal with in your life. And recognize, even though you haven't reached that goal, that ultimate goal yet, you will reach it by doing this. And recognize too that just the very action of doing this one step, you feel better off than you were a week ago. All right. So if things feel clearer, even a bit, and not so far out of reach, let's just pause for a second. Imagine that is true. Imagine an event where that was true. You made progress. Now here's the question. What did that mean for how you spent your time? Was how you spent your time a factor at all? Did you spend it daydreaming? All right. Netflix, books, distraction, online, gaming, disproportionate amount of time to the point that was a distraction. And then you convinced yourself you needed to do that. Don't you need to meet the goals in your life that are most important to you? Isn't that fundamental? Giving yourself meaning, realizing your meaning in life, being good to yourself, loving yourself, respecting yourself, because daydreaming is very different from visualizing. The present is the only thing each and every one of us here today have or will ever have. For you to be thinking it and feeling it means it remains present. So be careful. Make sure and be very, very careful about what you allow to be part of today. All right. Don't let it creep in. All right. Right now is where things are happening in this moment. A reminder, we don't have the 35 minutes that we had when we started this podcast. It's gone. We don't get that back. How did we spend our time? And we are not talking about overdoing it. We're talking about balance. We're talking about good self-care factored in. We're talking about joy, fun, and play because that's where you're going to get your fuel. We are talking about reminding yourself that even though one of my jokes when I completely foul up, all right, which happens periodically, well, more frequently than is really comfortable sometimes, is that I say to myself, I have a master's degree. So I know I'm at least trainable. Okay. I may not have this, but I know I'm at least trainable. All right. And that gives me hope. Okay. But reminding yourself that you are a growing, learning, developing human being is a great way, in tangible ways, to validate yourself. Right now is where it's happening. All right. Please realize that the best use of today is to make enough of it meaningful to you in important ways. And so the first question I want you to ask yourself is, how can you do that? How can you make today? We're not talking the whole 24 hours. We're talking in some important way to you personally. How can you make today meaningful? And if you're not sure, then ask yourself a slightly different question. Okay, how can I add meaning, actually add meaning to today? All right. And I'm thinking that might be the 1, 2, 3 step. What can I do immediately toward my goal? What can I do or plan to do, schedule a little further out? And what can I schedule and get ready to complete longer term? All right. Because even a little bit of meaning today and tomorrow and the next day, it can happen easily just by putting one baby step in front of the other and watching for the enemy. The enemy is when you tell yourself you're going to do something realistic, all right, not overboard, realistic. What we did say, one baby step, all right, you keep your word to yourself. All right, you don't let a distraction. Somebody calls you and they need something, they can need it in a half hour, unless there is altogether now projectile vomiting or a femoral bleed. All right, they can wait a half hour when you do one small thing. And I want to credit Thibaut Meurice. I'll spell his name. The books are a little bit formula, but they have some good thoughts in them. You can probably get them at the library. It's Thibaut, Meurice, French, Meurisse. And he does a series. As I say, it's a little bit formula, like step 1, step 2, step 3, but there is content in there that he has some really brilliant questions. All right. The answer to how to get there is a little bit like a reader's manual, which can be not as helpful if you're carrying other baggage. All right. But he does a series on mastering motivation, time, and negative thinking. And so I decided to use his little books. Here's the one on motivation. All right. And there's a yellow one on time. And I will also be using the one he did on negative thinking, because it's a really great skeleton for me to attach my clinical experience with respect to hoarding. All right. Now, I find this next sentence brilliant. Brilliant. Write it down. All right. This is the kind of question you should have on your bathroom mirror. All right. Where, if I keep doing what I'm doing today, will I end up? Ain't that a doozy? Ain't that a doozy? All right, I love it. It's gentle. It's kind because you're telling yourself the truth. Nobody's judging you. And it doesn't take away your authority over yourself. It does say life's a choice. Now, the next question might be a little far out. I don't mean far out as in flaky or anything, just time-wise far out. Where do you want to be in, you put in the length of time. He asks 5 years. I don't know about you folks, but after this pandemic, I'm not asking 5-year questions because we may not be able to leave the house. But realistically, in ways that are meaningful for you, where do you want to be in? Do you have a projected date? Okay, let's try 1 week. Most of us are going to get another week. Where do you want to be in 1 week? Do you want to be there with that action completed? Okay. Or do you want to have taken 7 baby steps toward it and feel pretty good about the fact you're on track? Wouldn't that be a winning combination? Isn't that worth trying? To be 7 steps, 7 baby steps closer? All right. And can anybody see? Usually this is helpful when the end goal isn't like a long-term thing. What about in a month? Let's just take it that far. Okay. But I'm going to ask you a question. So it's the 3rd of August, 2022. When you turn the calendar page over, August 3rd, 2023, and we're still talking on Zoom, but now you're one of the celebrants. You're the guy putting the try this, it worked for me in I just saw somebody's message here. Sorry, I got distracted. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? Any idea? What neighborhood do you want to be in as far as whatever your goal is? Second question. This one's a doozy too. When you look back on whatever period of time, today, this year, a month, and you think, will you look back on it and think, feel that this was a good time? When was the last time, this is my question, when was the last time that you looked back on a period of time and went, that was a good time, rather than, I'm so glad that I'm so glad that I'm out of that. I'm so glad I'm past that. And when you look back on, because most of you will, if you persist and you get the help you need, okay? You look back on whatever the challenge is that brings you here today, and you look back on that. I want you to be able to go, I am so proud of myself. That was tough. That was tough. The only thing I lacked was the confidence and the belief that I could do it. And maybe as well, the skills and the strategies to not make it overwhelming, more overwhelming than it had to be. To me, it felt like a mountain. But what I really realized was it was just a bunch of rocks that if I removed one at a time, okay, and there are only so many rocks you can carry at a time, people. All right, I did one at a time. Guess what? That ain't no mountain. Okay, now it's just rocks. Will you look back on this period of time, that period of time, and ask yourself instead, because you hear it, but you don't try what we're talking about, okay? Will you look back on it and say, gee, I wish I'd done X, Y, and Z instead? Will you look back? When was the last time you looked back and said to yourself, gee, if I'd only done X, Y, and Z, I'd be finished now? Which of those two choices would you rather make? Which position because you have the ability, you have the power to be, I swear it's true. You're lacking nothing. All right. You've got all the strategies, all of the information. You can go back and listen to these podcasts. I'm not flogging the book, but you can look up, okay, what do I do in this? All right, there are other books, there are other pieces of information, all right, that you can also utilize to fortify yourself. You have the ability to be in either one of those two positions. Which one is it going to be? Which one would you most want to be in? Please don't let it be, but I didn't. And as I look around myself, I've allowed myself to march in place. Every single minute, every single morning, rather, when you wake up, remind yourself, understand that the 24 hours you have ahead of you is a gift. Some people aren't waking up this morning. They thought they would, and they aren't. And so I ask you also to ask yourself, despite the fact that things may not be the way you want them to be, or where you want to be in your life right now, please do whatever you believe expresses the gratitude for the things you do have. Every day, express the gratitude in some way. Thank you, Lord, or whoever you pray to, or whatever you think the foundation piece is for things are as positive as they are. And also, let yourself have the hope that it's reasonable for you to have the right to be grateful for what you have, recognizing that even when it isn't exactly the way you want to be, appreciating the good and recognizing where that good comes from. In part, it comes from you and whatever reality, all right, created it. And that good, that ability to be okay is part of you. It's solid. Understanding and accepting that life doesn't owe us anything. All right? Life doesn't owe us anything. And every single thing we have, even the things we've worked for, are a gift, because there are lots of people who have worked just as hard as we have. All right? We're just as smart as we are, just as capable. And it didn't turn out that way for them. And nothing, even the challenges that are going to happen, can be an opportunity to learn how we can do better. And the opportunity to learn from our mistakes, from our disappointments, can't be taken for granted. And out of gratitude for what today offers you, even if it's just some undefined kind of opportunity, the possibility that today you could have the opportunity to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that is for you, that moves you in some small way possible, is a gift. It isn't just work. All right. And it is possible. If you can imagine it, it's possible for you. Out of gratitude for the gift of today, make that 3-step plan before I see you next week. All right? Make that 3-step plan. What's the goal? What can I do right this minute? Write it down, then do it. What do I believe is just a little bit out of reach? All right, I'm pretty sure, but it just feels like I'd have to stretch. Next week, maybe? What then? And what does the end product, what does the end goal look like? This plan's going to lead you there. Okay, here are the component parts for that plan. 1, what would it take? What do you need to do to make today a good day? And you get to define what good day is. Look at what's possible right in front of you. That's what you have to use. All right? Maybe you're not giving the right meaning to the time you have, to other assets you have, to other gifts and availabilities that you have. Maybe you haven't recognized what their potential is. Second question, what would make today one I would wish to remember? All right. How can I make today a day I would look forward and wish to remember? And what would move that today being a day I would wish for in remembering? What would move that closer to my ideal vision? That way out goal. So do you see you're really creating a path that is narrowing so that you don't have so much to do? You fine tune that plan. All right. You harmonize it. Okay. That is a part of where I want to go as I move forward. That ideal, that what is the next step? That's what I'm looking for. I don't have to figure it out step by step. I only have to figure it out one step at a time. So long as it feels right, that it's moving in the direction of the long-term goal, and now I know what that looks like. Good enough, well enough. If it feels right, then I probably am moving forward. And what do I need to do today, right, so that today's work doesn't become and get added to tomorrow's work? There is no just for now, folks. All right. When you've got a goal, just for now, there is no just for now. Because just for now has a way of making today's leftover work become an additional burden tomorrow. And when you develop and you give into that habit, it is a habit. It's not a requirement. All right. When you do that, 3 steps out, 3 days out, you are bent over from the undone things of 3 days. Little trick. You can't turn things around on a dime, but a little trick is this, okay? When you're using something, try to make its home space no more than 4 to 5 steps from where you use it. And even if you just start doing that a little bit at a time, I can't tell you how exponentially that influences you to put it away rather than put it down. There's something about that 5th, 6th, 7th step. We come into this world genetically, anthropomorphically, with a negative bias. Avoid the pain. All right. That is a bias we have, the negative bias. Our brain feeds that. Okay. But we are misjudging the pain of the extra 4th and 5th step to put that thing away when we put it down just for now. All right. There is no just for now. Okay. Just for now never happens. All right. So watch out for the negative bias. Oh, it's okay. I'll just put it down. Just start switching things around so that wherever they're meant to be used. All right. Garbage is a good one. They are no more than, hopefully, 4 to 5 steps from where you use them. All right. The other thing I'm going to ask people, until you really have this buttoned down, watch how punishing you make your recycling habits. Do recycle, but it's a better option, even if you have to pay a little bit more, to buy a product that is contained in something you don't need to recycle once every 2 weeks. Because who here today has a living space where there's abundant room for the glass, the plastic, the cardboard, the paper, the garbage, keep going, all right? We are recycling everything but our back teeth, all right? And watch that you're not overcommitting. Think upstream. I'm not saying don't recycle, all right? But maybe don't buy that thing that's in a plastic tub. even if it is 10 cents cheaper. Okay, when you're having to wash that out and put it and go someplace extra to put it in recycling, are you going to wish you had that 10 cents? Okay, think upstream. What is kind and respectful to the time you have and the energy you have? And do your level best, because if today's work becomes tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, it will become insurmountable and overwhelming. It's a choice. All right. Make the right choice for yourself. And I will see you next week for eliminating negative thinking. Well, at least knowing how to eliminate negative thinking. You guys have a great week, and I hope the world is good to you. Make it as good as you can. Take care, everybody.